So introductions, my name is Tim Stevens, Managing Director of i4Business. We're a data marketing intelligence provider, been around for 25 years, predominantly working with technology companies within sort of security and software, providing them contact and company information for European target markets. Today we also have Vicky, our sales manager, who will introduce herself later on. And we also have Andrew from MX Monitor. Andrew, do you want to do a short introduction to who you are?
Yeah, sure. So Andrew Roberts, I've been working in the IT data side of things for 25, 30 years now. And MX Monitor is basically a tool or service that looks at clients' marketing, email marketing, and compares it to a demand generation framework that we've got together. And from that, we create recommendations for improvements to people's demand generation strategy. We do that by inserting loads of trackers into people's marketing databases and see what comes up. Most relevant for organizations with multiple teams, but we're using the information that we've gathered in that as the basis for feeding back on anything or contributing to anything in this webinar.
Brilliant stuff. Good stuff. If anyone has any questions that we'll kind of leave till the end, then please try to put them in the Q&A option rather than the chat or anything. Just be easier to run through those at the end. So the reason why we're here, so we're talking obviously about mistakes we see in email marketing. So we see a lot of communications from clients when we monitor the use of our information that we provide them. We obviously do a lot of communications ourselves as well. So we thought we'd sort of share some insights as to what we come across and what we think kind of works. Reason for sort of solely focusing on email is it's still the #1 marketing channel for our, in terms of return on investment and engagement. And just to sort of set out, according to HubSpot in the last 12 months, because of everything that's been going on, where the world's become more digital, 80% of marketers have reported an increase in email engagement, which is great. The industry standards set by sort of MailChimp have mentioned that an average sort of open rate is about 21.8%. And the average click rate is about 2.8%. And I mentioned these because we'll be going through some examples later on. But the fact is that 306 billion emails, so quite a lot, are sent every single day. So it's essential for us to try and make sure our marketing communications stand out and are as effective as possible. So first sort of thing we're going to focus on, which is seen as perhaps quite a small thing, but it does have a huge impact. 65% of recipients decide whether or not to read an email purely based on the subject line. So it's a very sort of critical part of your campaign or email communication. And we feel that this is where we kind of want people to be more creative, create intrigue, be sort of more to the point. And we've got a few examples to show you for that. So one where kind of creating intrigue, this is one we ran a few months ago. We actually kind of featured the fact that we were going to be doing some sort of cold calls to our target market by playing on that in the sense of looking forward to talking to you, to create that intrigue of, why are you going to be talking, I agree to a call kind of thing. And it was actually very successful. And as you can see, the 53% open rate, but engagement was great from it as well. So putting something together where you're kind of, creating a bit of intrigue for them to open it will help with the open rates. Just to clarify, in some of these screenshots, you'll see it says hi there. That is just because Campaign Monitor, which is the platform we use, these are just the sort of dummy versions. They are all personalized to the individual. So John, James, Jesse, whatever it may be, just so you're aware, because part of this webinar, we're obviously talking about personalization and addressing them correctly. We do address them correctly in our own emails. It's just these dummy ones that show hi there. So next one is about kind of trying to be blunt, trying to be to the point, lay it sort of be honest with your audience. So As we all know, data compliance is pretty boring, so we thought we'd actually feature that fact, and also feature the fact that what we want them to do, which is download a PDF that we put together. So as you can see, a huge open rate on that, 73%, very, very successful campaign. I think probably highest open rate we've had in the last 10 months or so, yeah, way above sort of industry standard, which is great. And that's kind of just, I think, because a bit of honesty and sort of playing on the fact that you can't really make compliance sexy in any way. So so don't try. Another one is being a bit creative. So here is so we put together for our sort of customer base. Traditionally, our type of business and our model, we don't sort of have a rewards set up as such, because it tends to be more consumer focused, rewards program. But we put that one together, and yeah, again, extremely high open rate of 41%. I don't have the click numbers with me, but again, that was a very successful one as well. And then also make sure that we're kind of linking emails together. Because after all, you are putting sort of campaigns together with multiple touch points, multiple emails going out. So make sure you're linking them together. This is an example where we sent an email out, and then we obviously just put a follow-up about making sure that people don't forget to register for the ones that had opened it previously and not registered. And as you can see, we saw an even higher open rate on those ones where we've drilled down into understanding what people did from a previous email, and then obviously changing the subject to kind of complement that. In all the examples, you'll have seen that we've kind of put first name. It doesn't actually state the first name, but you can see there in the subject that first name would be added. We don't sort of recommend to do that on every single communication you do. It just happens to be some of these examples we've picked out have all got first name in the subject, but it can be an effective way, obviously being sort of personal and things. One thing to try and do is to keep subject lines as short as possible. And also this may sound silly and obvious, but picking things like typos and relevance of sort of references, so correct months or years and things. We do see things like that being entered incorrectly, and it just doesn't have a good impact on sort of brand and the way the company's seen. Always test subject lines. So with the majority of email marketing communication providers, they'll have the facility to do A/B testing, Marketos and Eloquas and MailChimps, campaign monitors, those kind of things. They'll all have that automation to do it. So make sure you kind of make the most of those tools. And also on the testing subject, make sure you're testing also the creative, the messaging, the media, and also how you deliver it, whether it's a plain text or HTML. So yeah, subject lines, very, very key, obviously, in ensuring that people read and open the emails, and you're not going to get engagement unless they do so. So, Andrew, have you got anything to add on subject lines from your perspective, from from MX Monitor's view on things?
From our experience, yeah. I mean, first of all, the point about data protection compliance and not being sexy, about a third of the work we do is on data protection compliance. So thanks for puncturing my bubble there, Tim, honestly. But yeah, we've got two main things, really. One is effective, as you've picked up, the effective quality checking. So often we get typos, spaces missing, double spaces in subject lines. And, as this is a shop window for the organization, for hot prospects, potentially, then that is an issue. But the second one is also reusing old content. We quite often have people who have said, right, we're using last year's or previous campaigns data setups, and we're going to just remassage it. And we've had elements where we've got subject lines incorrect, where you said during next week's webinar, and in fact the webinar's a couple of weeks away. We've had different subject lines to the actual content of the body. And also, we had one client who said, right, we've got the certain client, we've been named Gartner's Magic Quadrant leader for the 5th straight year, which is great, but they've just taken the previous year, and actually this was their 6th year. Minor thing in some ways, but also, relatively, they could be sort of cause some confusion there. The other element on the A/B testing, absolutely right, except that there are so many things that can be tweaked. You need to make sure there's a proper strategy so that you know that when you change one thing, that's what actually is causing the impact, rather than all of the different elements within the email.
Yeah, no, very good point there. Good stuff. Cool, thank you very much. Moving on to next, personalization. So obviously we're biased in what in the first point we're going to make, but one of the key things is good, accurate data. You can't sort of personalize your communications without that accurate information. So things like having correct job roles for the individuals, so you know what sort of responsibility you have within the teams that they work in, making sure that the first names are there, and if they are there, they're correct with the correct spelling. We see a lot of initials or blanks, and yeah, it just doesn't look great, doesn't look personable when receiving those. And it's a very basic thing that should be very easy to get right, but then we have to remember that that's how the recipients would see it as well. So we see sometimes people not addressing anyone at all. We even see sometimes where the mail merge within the system that they're using hasn't worked. So it'll just literally say, dear first name, without actually specifying it, or contact name, or any of the other types. And it switches the reader off, and they'll probably, they won't read the rest of the email potentially, and they may view your brand in a negative fashion. Another key part is language, and this is probably the number one pitfall we see in sort of from a personalization perspective, is organizations that are established, well-known brands that have in-house native speakers like we do from a research perspective, not writing in native language to certain countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, where you're kind of not really going to have your emails read if you're sending them in English. Obviously, it does depend on industry to industry and types of people, but from what we've seen, we know it does switch the recipients off. And to give a statistic, we actually see a 700%. This is in our own use, 700% increase in engagement. And when I say engagement, actual sort of responses and things, when using native language in the copy. So has a drastic impact on that. And it's not the hardest if you haven't got in-house native speakers or in-house sort of translators. Then there's a huge amount of firms out there. We use a few where we need to. We also have native speakers internally as well to do it, and it's not costly. And I think that extra effort can really help ensure that people respond well to campaigns and also engage with you. So yes, personalization. Andrew, would you add anything else from MX Monitor?
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on the mixed language side, or on the language side of things. First of all, I mean, we get instances where there are mixes of languages within bodies, and that tends to jar more than either just in English or in the local language. So that's just something to bear in mind. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. Other things are the introduction, getting a standard within your business. Is something, within the clients that we work with, you'll get the hi again, hello, the no name, exactly as you say, which can be an issue. And then bearing in mind, obviously, that country-specific introductions like German language tends to be a lot more formal in the introductions compared with other countries as well. So they need to it can't just be directly translated. But time zones is another one. If you're doing it across different countries, it's important to make sure they know where the time, which time zone the webinar is in. But the other thing that we get every year is people in March saying, right, this is being broadcast at 11 o'clock GMT because that's the time they're in at the moment, and then when it comes to it, actually they meant BST because it's in April or whatever, and that can cause confusion as well. So that's an element, and then in the campaign templates, remember, it's not just about the body text and the high first name. You've also got putting stuff in the subject line, the eyebrow text, the email header, all of things like that could potentially be customized as well.
Yeah, it's a good point about just adding some more on the language point that you pointed out. So it's something that we work hard to make sure that we provide the language of each record in our database. So if you do work with a data provider and they do some form of sort of language, and make sure that they're providing you the language of the person rather than just the region or the company as such. Because again, there'll be different languages spoken within different areas and different companies. And you want to make sure you get that right, so that you're confident that everyone's going to be engaged with your communications. So cool. Okay. Next is the content. So we need to show how your target's individual's kind of life is made easier, or the job is made easier, in addition to the core benefits of the product or service. I know that's quite an obvious thing, and a lot of people will know that, but we still see a lot of organizations, not actually highlighting how it makes their life easier, and being a bit more blunt about the effects of the product or service on their job, rather than just the company as such. And it needs to grab attention to the right people in the right way. The kind of the emails that you send are part of an entire email marketing campaign. So before you rush to hit the send button, let's consider with a wider approach to give your campaign sort of maximum impact. So things like making sure that you've got follow-up messages within the other kind of media to complement the emails, like telemarketing, social media, direct mail, additional email communications. So it's more thought out, and it's got a kind of effective process to it, with all the different touch points. Focus each campaign on one key thing. So a specific offer, a specific message or update, a specific service that might be new or what have you. Don't complicate your messaging and dilute your campaign's impact by focusing on too many things, because it's going to confuse the reader and they're not necessarily going to remember the key thing that you wanted them to. Make sure your marketing campaign is consistent with your brand as well, and that's obvious, but again, it needs to have the impact that you want it to. And finally, your messaging needs to be personal. So speak directly to your individual audience members and not them as a collective. Make the messaging specific to a sort of niche set of job responsibilities or type of person within your target organizations, and set out in the content how you address the specific problems of that specific niche audience, because this will all add into the impact on the of the results. And something more specific is video. Video, as we all know, is a very successful way of getting engagement. Give you an example. We did a video. This was a kind of GIF image that went to obviously a link on our website with the video, and we got a 50% increase. 50% more engagement using video than we do through static images. And I wouldn't use video all the time, because we have seen in the past, if you use it consistently, then it kind of stagnates the results. But it's something good to kind of have regularly, but just not too often. I'll give you an example. This particular campaign, which was just a boring sort of subject in terms of the data compliance, but we got a 45% open rate, but we got 20% clicks, which is extremely good. So yeah, video can have a very, very good impact on engagement. Andrew, any other content advice you would give?
Yeah, well, really on the call to action is that, what we see seems to work best is where you actually lead people into the call to action. So it's not just there as a webinar link or whatever it might be, but you've got the subject line, as we said, the IBO tax email header, the email body, all effectively as a sequential means of trying to lead people to the call to action. So, even something as simple as putting the sort of key phrases in bold in the email body, but drawing people into that call to action is something that works well. And then the other point that you make is taking advantage of the email to cross-fertilize, so related webinar links or content libraries or big events or exhibitions in the footers, but balancing that element that you said you don't want to confuse things too much, but allowing people to say, yes, there's a call to action, but there's other things that could be of interest to me as well.
Yeah. And you've beaten me to it, because that was going to be my next sort of topic, is the specific call to action. So you've yeah, you knew so well. So yeah, email should focus on one clear message, which Andrew sort of covered there, where it's sort of the synergy across the different areas of your content, your subject line. But I guess the main thing is to keep it to kind of one clear call to action, and make sure it's obvious what you want them to do. So tell them specifically what you want them to do next. Is it to buy something, to sign up, to register, download an app, whatever it may be. Tell them what to do and how to do it. And this is a huge one, in the sense, just like the subject line, that can make a huge difference between the success of a campaign. Another thing is just repeat as well. And I don't mean repeat as in send the same email again. We've obviously covered that, but repeat in the sense of repeat the call to action throughout the copy, so that if someone has read through it properly, they'll be well rehearsed in terms of what you want them to do. So if they don't do it, then it must mean that there's lack of interest or lack of understanding. So open rates are great for awareness, but if there isn't a clear kind of call to action, you won't get the effective engagement, like form fields and everything that we want. The number one pitfall sort of in this area that we see is a lack of call to action at all. We see lots of sort of traditional marketing emails that are, updating someone's audience, a company's audience about something that's new or something that's educational, without any specific call to action. No sort of registration for any events or forms or anything like that, which is fine, because there are plenty of campaigns where you should be educating your audience. You don't necessarily want them to, but you still can perhaps creatively think of things that you can do to make sure that there is a call to action to get some engagement from your target audience. So an example, if you're finding it tough to create a call to action about any of the topics that you're bringing up in your email marketing, then try to create a few online assets, so guides related to your product or service or the industry as a whole, and then push them to your audience to download with a form in front of it, so that you can see what's going on with those guys. So I think, Andrew, you've kind of covered some of the other bits about call to action, so I won't go to you on this side. The last part we want to talk about is the segmentation and targeting. We've kind of already mentioned about specific groups with sort of targeted messaging, rather than just sending the same to all, because one size doesn't fit all in the majority of cases. So the more we can kind of niche down your audience and fine tune the content to match that particular audience, then the better engagement you'll have. If you don't have the capacity to specify or create 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever it may be, different messages for the different personas that you have, then just try a few to start with, to make sure that what you do send out resonates with them well. another stat about from Campaign Monitor is that the marketers that do use segmented campaigns where they're really niching down to their audience noted a 760% increase in revenue. So it does help with the engagement of your audience, your campaigns. And not only that, we must think about the different personas that you're targeting. So rather than just sending different messaging, it might be the same kind of message but slightly tweaked for each of those personas. Make sure you're truly talking about how it solves the different problems, as we spoke about earlier, of those different people. So don't just change the subject line or change a tiny bit of the copy within the email for each persona. Try to actually think about the different problems that they face and you know, and change the messaging that way. Yeah, that will obviously enable you to put together different messaging, just thinking about those problems alone. Yeah, the more you can kind of get opening your emails, the more clicks, the more eyes on your website, the more visits to your online store, and then hopefully potentially the more sales. So yes, in terms of segmentation, one of the problems of segmentation can be kind of, how do you find your target audience, or the key information about them, you know, the language, the first names, the job roles, etc., etc. That's where i4business can come in. As I mentioned before, we provide contact and company information for across EMEA for all companies that have 250 staff or more. We put these contacts through a permission process, so they're all opted in for our customers to communicate to them, and we have an online platform whereby basically organizations can log in, specify what they want, and then export that information. So Vicky's just going to spend 5 minutes quickly just showing us that, and then we'll go through a Q&A. So yeah, any questions you've got, you can get them in the Q&A section, and we'll run through those. And so yeah, I will pass over to Vicky. I'm gonna make you host. There you go.
Hi everyone, I'm Vicky. As Tim has mentioned, I'm the sales manager here, and I will quickly show you the kind of like main functions of i4business. Don't worry, I'm not going to drone on about every single function we have on our system because there are quite a few. I'll keep it nice and snappy to like the key ones, which is our contact search, where you can actually segment the data, to our smart lists, and then to our upload functionality. Don't worry, I'll go over all of those now. So, like I said, the main first one people always tend to use is our contact search. You can obviously look up individuals. However, the majority of people do obviously kind of take this criteria-based approach. So the first one, you want to select your countries. With i4business, we cover EMEA, so you have quite a lot of choice there in terms of who you want to go after. And as you can see, you can select individual countries or even specific areas or postal areas. But if I just go for the British Isles, just to keep things simple, you'll see as soon as you make selections, the system will actually give you a live count of the data relevant at the moment. And then it's literally up to you, and it's easy to go to add search criteria and add anything else you are interested in. Typically, people tend to stick to company size, industries, and the job personas. When it comes to company size, we do have quite a few different options, but if I'm being completely honest, the majority of people kind of stick to number of employees and the revenue, just to keep it nice and easy. And then again, you see the system will just try and tell you exactly how much data is relevant. Industries, like I said, is the next big one, because you do want to obviously make sure that whatever you are selling, you're not selling to the wrong industries, because again, people are just not going to open that and go think, oh, this is not relevant to me. We have the option to select specific industries, or alternatively, if you do have a product which is quite broad and you can target multiple industries, but you know, for example, you do not want to deal with the public sector, then you have the option also to exclude them. We have over 300 industries to choose from, just to really give you that granularity, so you can be really as precise as you possibly can be. For example, just go into the finance sector here. As you can see, we have lots of subsectors. So just select whatever is relevant to you and then move on to our next section, which is obviously the types of people you wish to speak to. Obviously, if you've got an IT breakfast seminar you organising, you don't really want to invite the HR people. So make sure that you do go to the relevant personas afterwards. There's two ways how we typically categorize our contacts. As you can see, we do have the specific job titles, but I'm sure all of you will agree with me that job titles nowadays can actually be quite vague, and they don't always picture or paint a full picture of what that person is responsible for. So therefore, we have this little index here, and this index is actually based on the responsibility of that person. But it does obviously also help if you are, let's just pick UK, a UK marketing department, and you're kind of responsible for coordinating all of the efforts across EMEA. At least that way you don't have to translate all the different job titles, and that makes it just nice and easy to choose from. We've got two categories: your line of business contacts, which is really anything from your chief executives down to your people within finance, HR, marketing, sales. And then here we also have your typical IT aligned roles, as you can see straight at the top, your IT executives, but that you can also drill down into people within applications, network, security. Again, just picking up on that IT breakfast seminar example, you want to make sure that you actually invite kind of the right level of contact. So therefore, we do give you, again, a lot of options here in terms of you can pick your chief level decision maker. As you can see on the side, we do have also your kind of like mid-tier decision makers, but also the really junior people. Obviously, those are the people we probably don't want to necessarily invite to a webinar or like a breakfast seminar like that, but they're still really handy from a brand awareness point of view, or maybe also sales, where you want to start at the bottom, understand the pain point, and then work your way through. Literally select however many contacts you want, select the different levels, and once you're actually done making all your selections, you do have then here your results, and hopefully it's going to be a nice niche kind of like list where you know exactly all those contacts are going to be relevant to your campaign. And then it's literally asked to download them into a CSV file here. We have obviously standard download templates. However, you do have the option also to create your own download templates, because we do appreciate, only because we do offer a bunch of information, you might not want to download all we have to offer. So you can create your own little examples here. I won't do actually a proper download. Obviously, we do take data protection very serious, hence me also not opening up any contacts, just obviously that we don't display any email addresses or telephone numbers. This is the one part of the system. The other one, obviously, which is also quite relevant, which a lot of companies and a lot of our customers do, obviously, if you have an account-based marketing strategy. So if you have a specific list of companies you want to target, you don't really want to look them up all individually. Therefore, we do have this upload section here. The upload, don't worry, I won't go into too much detail here. I'll keep it nice and short. The upload essentially enables you just to drag in your file of target accounts, and then the system will do all the work for you. So essentially, it will go looking for all the companies within your file, or if you provided us a list with emails, it will go looking for those emails. The system is one of the most sophisticated ones which are out there in the market. The system will look for direct matches. If that can't be found, it will go searching our alias database. And that can really range from anything from a former name, a division name, a brand name, a common misspelling. Tim and me, we always talk about how surprised we are when people try to find McDonald's spelling it M-A-C, or people still trying to find Abbey National, who obviously have been taken over by Santander a long time ago. But essentially, the tool will still help you find the relevant companies. And as a very last resort, it will strip out noise words like LTD, PLC, and so on. Once the match is complete, as you can see here, you do get a nice little breakdown of everything which has matched. It gives you an exact match reason, so you can really go through your results and make sure you are happy with what the system is offering you, but it will also tell you what we haven't been able to match. As Tim mentioned, we are a little bit more focused on the enterprise sector. So if you tried searching for tiny companies which have maybe 2 employees, we wouldn't necessarily have those on our system, so they would come back as unmatched. Or maybe the name you've provided has just been too different to what we have on the system. But the key point is, if you have a list of companies, you want to know that we have the relevant contacts on our system for them. And that's literally where you just go back into the contact search, where you have actually the option to restrict your entire search here to that list of companies you have just uploaded. So that's here right at the bottom, scroll, add search criteria, and then you can see the upload section here, which will give you an overview of everything you have previously uploaded. And then, like I said, you can restrict it. Or alternatively, if you're only looking for net new data, then also you can work on the basis of excluding data. It's exactly the same procedure where you go through that, and rather than tick include, it will say exclude. So then you know, at least with your next campaign you're going out trying to get new leads, then it's only relevant to those people. What we recommend, regardless of what you do on the system, we do recommend highly to build a smart list afterwards. A smart list is actually a really cool function whereby it's under this action button here, as you can see here, so create smart list. I'm just going to go to an old smart list I've built beforehand because I try to be a little bit organized, but essentially the smart list will remember all of your criteria you have previously used to build this exact list, which means the system can go looking each and every day for any new contacts matching these criteria. So it's a very easy way keeping or getting net new contacts on a regular basis without actually having to do an awful lot of work and then having to dedupe data. Essentially then, this is a brand new list, so that's why it says 0 updates pending. However, if you come baby back next week, it will say 20, 30, 40 updates pending, and then you know, okay, that's net new data, but the system also alerts you to people who have left. So obviously you want to take those out to keep your bounce rate low, but also it will highlight changes to existing records you've previously downloaded. That might be things like an email change, a job title change. So it's just a very easy way keeping on top of your data, keeping it up to date without actually having to do an awful lot. These are kind of like the 3 key systems or the key functionalities of the system. And I suppose that's already it from my side. So I'll hand you back over to Tim in that case. You can then finish this off.
Thanks, Vicky. So I was trying to find where the mute was. Last of all, I won't need to share anything more because I think we're just going to go on to a Q&A now. So there's a couple of questions coming in, but I'll start off with a few that we had asked previously before. And Andrew, if this is kind of targeted to yourself, what's the most sort of common problem you see when reviewing email communications for your customers at MX Monitor?
Yeah, so the first one that we get is actually getting data into the systems. So as a part of what we do with the MX Monitor stuff, we actually put data in through webinar registrations, newsletter subscriptions, and things like that. And the time that about 50% of the data has not made it into the marketing databases within a 6-week time frame. So these are people who are going in and saying, I might be interested in your products enough to actually find out more about it, and yet they're still not being marketed to, a lot of them, within 6 weeks. So that's quite a major issue. I know that's not directly related to email marketing, but obviously it's a big foundation element to it. The other element, which we sort of dragged out a lot through the to sort of this call, is the effective quality checking of the email content. You know, about 50-odd% of the data we check has typos in it. Some of them minor, some of them larger, but you know, there is that regular thing of people saying, I need to get this out, I need to rush it. But somewhere there needs to be a quality check, and that is so often not built into the process, somehow, especially in larger organizations. The final element for us is basically sort out what your best practice for your demand generation framework should be. Just looking at, you know, when I'm sending out email waves, how many should I send? Should they all have the same subject line and body, which a lot of people do, which I find a bit boring? Or should you mix it up? Should you try and work out what the different emails in a wave should be? How often should they have it? How frequently should people be contacted? What are the optimal, even down to the optimal days of the week that you know, might be in different countries, different elements? And then, as you say, you know, making sure that you got relevance and interest to help the open rates, to help people open things up. And to do that, exactly as you said, Tim, it's a segmentation issue. So often we have people who, well, most of our clients actually base their segmentation on keywords in job titles, and that just isn't very effective, which is why things like i4business and the job roles in there, we use that quite a bit to drive that. but we still have examples of supply chain messaging that financial institutions receive, or information about programming languages that IT directors receive. So there's real clashes there, and it's not just a matter of this isn't relevant to me, I'm deleting it. It can also be down to the level of, okay, this is making me think this company doesn't know who I am, and to be able to talk to me.
Yeah, and just to add to your second point about the kind of the rush to get an email out and typos being prominent, we see sometimes from perspective of things being rushed where they need to get an email out, but they've not sort of segmented effectively, so they have just gone, right, we'll just send it to everyone then, because there's that rush to get it out on a certain day or certain time, or for perhaps a certain event that that's happening in 10 days time, so they need to make sure they get emails out to them. So planning those is very important. Okay, another question was what percentage of emails you review sort of need improvement? How often do you come across these problems or these pitfalls in the emails that you monitor?
Okay, yeah. So picking up one of our current customers, we're reviewing 1,900 odd emails that have come in over the past 6 months, and out of those, about 35% were okay. We couldn't see any problems with. About 10% of those should not have been sent. There was that issues with the subject line just didn't relate to the body, or even in 2 waves that they sent out the Lorem Ipsum Dolor standard email with absolutely no content in it. Somehow the actual template had been sent out, which was okay. But for the remaining 55%, which are not a problem but are not perfect, it's typos, the inconsistent branding, which you picked up on, Tim, the other issues that we talked about in terms of the effective QA. But we have them all categorized into lapse errors, slip errors, and mistakes, and it's kind of, we can split them out that way. But an awful lot of it is about that effective quality checking, and it's about portraying a relatively shoddy image in your shop window. As people would say, it's not really a problem, but actually, for us it could be. For the pedants amongst us, everything has to be perfect.
Yeah, good stuff. Another question is from Thomas is, can you send emails to business email addresses that are not limited companies?
So from I mean, that's actually not a GDPR issue, because strictly according to GDPR, you can do that. There's no issues. But that's an e-privacy issue, and each country has its own laws that relate to e-privacy, now that we're all nicely coordinated. And that, in the UK's case, is PECA, the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations. And they see the corporate email addresses, which is Thomas will be referring to, so ones that are employees at big businesses, they aren't a part of, they don't need consent, and so you can send them without consent. However, if you're not that, so if you're a sole trader, certain type of partnerships, etc., you do need consent. They're effectively the same as consumers when you're sending emails out. And that's the same thing. When it's Hotmail, in theory, if it's a Hotmail, the contract between Hotmail, Gmail, etc., is with the individual and not with the organization, unless you're within the sort of Gmail Plus and all the rest of it. But if it's just a standard Hotmail, Gmail contract, they should be counted as individuals, and so you should have consent. However, the GDPR and all data protection is all about risk, and it's been designed to be all about risk. So this isn't about how you can get around it. If somebody has given you an email and said, I want you to contact me as a business, even if they're doing it implicitly and saying, here's my Hotmail when I'm signing up, and as a part of that, I'll, the consent doesn't matter, but it basically, there's not a massive risk if you've been given that email for that level of communication, even if consent wasn't achieved. But generally, if you have Hotmail, Gmail type emails in there, you shouldn't be sending them without consent. And I believe that i4business weeds them out automatically anyway, so you don't have any of those kind of personal email addresses within your systems.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we don't have any sort of sole traders and non-limited companies within our system at all, as well, because we only focus on companies larger than 250 staff, and we don't have any personal email addresses, even if they've given us permission to use them, just because it's we're focused on business to business, and we feel that's not the best communication to sort of method to go down. Just touching on Andrew's point about PECAR, that is actually having a reform at the moment, where it has been for many years. I think COVID did delay a lot of things with it. I believe they are actively working on it again, which means rules can change. They're mainly focusing on things to do with cookies and you know, and that kind of data, rather than more the sort of marketing side of things. But yeah, it is going through a reform, but who knows when that'll actually be live.
Yeah.
So
and one of the bigger impacts that they're looking at in that at the moment is actually the soft opt-in. So they're looking at extending that, and that's something that a lot of companies don't necessarily use. And that's if somebody has been a customer in the past couple of years, you can assume that they're consented to receiving marketing emails. And that is a way, potentially, Thomas, of being able to access and being able to communicate with people, because you can assume that consent in certain situations. So that is a potential angle to look at.
And I think they're also trying to remove any barriers for data protection fines under sort of GDPR, because PECAR and GDPR go hand in hand. They are doing things to make it easier for fines and things to be higher, which kind of mainly focuses, rather than who are you sending emails to, is how are you handling those emails. Are you providing those email addresses out to third parties for marketing communications? Are you passing it to partner or resellers or what have you, for them to send communications to that audience as well? They're the kind of things where, if the wrong person gets hold of it, or systems get hacked, or whatever it may be, then yeah, we all need to be making sure that we're secure and compliant when sort of processing data and passing it to others. And I believe, Andrew, you've got a solution for that may be helpful to people on the webinar.
Yeah, and there's basically a tool that allows people to compare different data sets, Clearcrypt, which it's completely compliant, because it effectively anonymizes the data before it's actually compared. So it not gets around, but it basically means that it doesn't apply, that people can compare data sets. They can look at suppressions, opt-outs, particular contacts to target, and all that kind of thing. So that is something that we've developed as a direct result of that.
Yeah.
The other angle on the ICO and the fines, when the ICO was first set up, they weren't funded at all by the fines, so they could apply them in a relatively independent way. However, recently, as we understand it, they can keep the fines that they levy, and I'm sure that they won't do this, but I will expect the amount and frequency of fines to go up, because that will mean more money for them.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if just finishing on that part, if anyone has concerns when they're sharing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of emails to an agency, or even perhaps a data partner like us, where they want to suppress them from any data they purchase, then if you've got any concerns about that, then Clearcrypt and Andrew can help with that. Cool. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions that someone wants to ask quickly now, then today's session's come to an end. Hope you've found it all valuable. If you have any questions about, email communications, about lead generation, about data as a whole, or even sort of MX Monitor's solution, which Andrew is obviously responsible for, where it can monitor how effective your campaigns are, then obviously do get in touch. The follow-up email will have everyone's details in there, including Andrew's, so you can contact us all direct. Yeah, we'll leave it for there. So thanks for attending, guys.